Listeners be advised. The Soliloquy podcast discuss matters related to the human experience and many that are sexual in nature. Due to this, some conversations may surround triggering topics such as sexual violence, self-harm, abuse, and much more. Please be advised, a list of crisis and psychological resources will be available in the show notes of this episode. With that said, let's get started with the show.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention please as we go through the following safety instructions.
In the event that there is a loss of cabin pressure, oxygen mask will drop from the overhead. Place the mask over your nose and mouth. Breathe normally as oxygen is flowing even if the mask is not inflated. Be sure to adjust your own mask before helping others.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Soliloquy podcast, where we step out and speak on sexuality. This is your favorite host, Vernon T. Scott, also known as Slaytor Jackson, and for you freaky motherfuckers out there, Sebastian Adams. On today's episode, we're mixing up a little bit of topics. We're going into a little bit of Planned Parenthood, as well as talking about condom usage, because look, I'm pro condom usage. Like, if you have not been listening to the podcast, where have you been? Like, wrap it up, okay? But with me and joining me in this conversation, I have this beautiful being by the name of Tara. How are you doing?
Oh, Vernon, such a pleasure to join you here. Thank you. I'm great today. Thank you. And such a better mood to be with you because you're so positive.
Oh, thank you. I try. That's how I make it through the days. Affirmations,
Mhm.
and sometimes you just gotta push through. Sometimes you just gotta push through because tomorrow is a brand new day.
Thank goodness.
Right. So, since this is your first time coming onto the podcast, and my guests have no idea who you are and all the amazing things that you do you mind filling them in a little bit about who you are, what you do, what you enjoy in life, your favorite color, I guess? So,
Oh, I love that.
right. So, Tara, who are you?
Mm, well, my favorite color is blue.
Yes. Yes. See, this
That's
is why.
just, yeah. The sky is blue. Yeah, my father had blue eyes. I just feel like, okay, blue is a good color.
It is.
Um,
It's the best
yeah.
color.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
All other colors bow down to the blue. I love
Oh,
you
yes.
all.
Yes. Blue, tranquility, and calmness. And it has this dynamicism to it where it's like it's light and it's dark and it's royal and it's amazing. It's majestic. I love blue.
Same. Oh, look at that. Look at that.
Mhm.
So you're a coach. So what do you do?
hmm hmm Yeah, so grounding this in reality. So what I do is I'm actually a sex therapist. So I'm a certified sex therapist and I'm a sexuality coach. I do both. So I see people in the field of sex and sexuality, exploring their desires, really helping them build a vocabulary, like a working vocabulary, so they can create a language, a common language between themselves and their beloved. Oftentimes, I find that a lot of people don't have a lot of words to speak about their pleasure, to speak about themselves, to speak about what turns them on, and that there's been a lot of shame around those experiences. Plus, there's not been a lot of modeling, so not a lot of talk about sex and sexuality. So I help people have a normalized experience that sex is really an amazing thing, and that it's amazing and it's good, and that there's some innocence in it, and there also is some vital life force that we get to tap into. So all of that I bring to the table when I'm speaking to people about sex and sexuality, which is what I do most of my days is we talk about sex.
Beautiful. Love it. I love it. Like I swear I would rather just be talking about sex on an ongoing basis. It's kind of weird. Like whenever I'm getting to know a person, I don't want to talk about sex because I really want to know more about them. Like dating apps or even just the hookup apps, they annoy me because so many people are very immediate and just so wanting the sex up front. And I'm just like, can we talk about something else? I don't, do
Mhm.
you, do you ever find yourself as like being in that space, or did you find yourself being in that space in the past?
Yeah, it's a very, I love that question because I'm really considering, like, here we are, we're getting to know each other, and we're talking about sex.
Right.
So because we're professionals, there's a contrast, and it's like, okay. And in the field of wanting to meet somebody, maybe wanting to be more intimate with somebody, maybe even have an erotic experience with that person, then do I feel okay speaking about sex? And I would say I kind of agree with you. I feel like there's some reserve on my part because I'm wanting to know about some other things before we even go there. So yeah, I agree. But it's interesting though, because here we are talking about sex.
Right, right. Like I remember there was this one guy who was messaging me and he was just like going in and in and in all about sex this, sex that. And I'm just like, I don't want to talk about sex. I'm tired of sex. Like, what's going on here? I don't, we can talk about anything. I'm tired of talking about sex. And then that's the thing that when I said that, that's when I had to do a little bit of self-reflection. I was like, you know, you talk about sex all day, right? So,
Sure thing.
what's different here? So yeah, it's very interesting how the mind works and just how we engage with other people. But I think it's kind of like the conversation of wearing different hats at different times, and you just take off the sexologist hat for a while. You're just like, I'm a normal person. I don't know anything,
Not.
right? If only. Oh God.
Hmm.
So one of the things we discussed when we were drafting up these episodes was just different ways to become sexually informed. And I know Planned Parenthood is definitely one of those, or the organization is definitely one of those places for individuals to go to grab some educational material. But we also get informed in different ways in different media, like even the TV show Sex Education. But what are some of the ways that you've noticed over the years, as well as you will recommend for other people as it relates to how they can become sexually informed and stay sexually informed?
Wow, yes. Over the years, and then I've been doing this work for a long time, a couple of decades, I would say consistent, viable, valuable information has been provided by Planned Parenthood. So I do appreciate them, that they're accessible. People can go to their doors, speak to a human, get information, get condoms, and receive. And I love that. I feel like there's an open atmosphere. And in this day and age of the internet, so and really after a global pandemic, so much more information is gotten from the web, and so people accessing things seem to be, goodness, I recommend podcasts like this one. I
Oh,
recommend, yeah, I recommend other podcasts and YouTube channels that provide information. There's also a lot of platforms that you can purchase videos, that people can get information from. So really, I mean, it's everything is out there. And what I like is that I like for people to gravitate towards the ones that work best for them. And again, standard is Planned Parenthood for go-to in-person information.
mm. Like I love their website, and it's crazy because you would think that, like, most definitely when it relates to statistics and just data driven research, somebody may want to go to the CDC or anything like that. But I find myself when it comes about, oh, I need a refresher on sexuality, I don't think about the CDC. Maybe for a STI or something like that, I might look into something and also look at the current statistics of like the prevalence rate and whatnot. But most of the time I just go to Planned Parenthood because their resources are like phenomenal. Like the first year I did Hovember, I utilized a lot of their research that they've done, and also I looked into some of the articles that they post like in their archives and whatnot, and how that developed over the years, and just found some conglomerate of multiple facts that I wanted to use just to educate people on like these are different things about sexuality that you might need to know. But like it's just an endless supply of information if somebody actually choose to dive into it. And I love that it's just a single resource hub versus like how some people may be like, oh, you have to go to the fifth page of Google. No, just go to Planned Parenthood. It has everything you need. It's research based. It is also contextualized for individuals. There's case study information that they relate to some of the studies that they've done, or some of the research that has been completed. So it has qualitative, quantitative, all that type of data that a person can use. So it's beautiful.
It's a beautiful thing. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that the case studies, the research base, that it's an evidence-based approach, that people are really getting some statistics and metrics. And I find that more people want that. They want to know what's working and what's not, and they want the data that's going to provide that. So that's what I like about the Planned Parenthood website. Some of the other novelty sites don't have those metrics. They just,
Mm.
because they haven't been around that long, or they're not even interested in keeping them. They're more interested in entertainment, or some version of information that is entertainment.
Yeah, and I love that with many of the research that is coming out now, there's the focus on pleasure, which is definitely needed. But I think when it comes to the other websites that's out there, um, it lacks nuance in that. It doesn't provide information on, people feel pleasure different ways. Just because this nipple play may impact this other person, they're able to have an orgasm from that does not mean that's something that you're going to do. And I think a lot of people get fixated on the one stop, or this is the only one method for you to have pleasure, that we end up losing sight of the goal, which is how can I please my individual partner. And oftentimes that's just having a conversation to figure out how you can do it.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And what I would say is, what I see in my practice too, is that oftentimes it is this performative paradigm where people get stuck, where
Mm.
they're wanting to please their partner. However, they're not able to identify what pleases them first. And I yeah, I approach things that it's important to know your own sovereignty or your own experience of sexuality, and then also know your partners if you choose, but to know yours first, because without that understanding, then there's really not much to share, right? Because it comes from within first, is my sense.
Ooh, that's a word. Whoever's
Mhm.
taking notes, make sure you put that in the minutes. Thank you. So, random question was actually part of the episode. Why is condoms important? Why are they important for people to use?
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, I would say primarily for the prevention of STIs, and then secondary for a prophylactic against pregnancy, right? Most people are using them because they don't want to get pregnant
Mhm.
after not wanting to get STIs. And I'd say that goes back to um, what I see in terms of people's sexual histories and what they receive in terms of education. A lot of people are receiving the message that they should be safe
Mhm.
and they should abstain.
And all of those are pregnancy prevention.
And yes, exactly. Yes. Yeah. And not much focus on pleasure. But
Mhm.
I think when we're talking about condoms, we're talking about, well, I think it's important to talk about pleasure with condoms too, because I'd say by and large, most people who choose not to use condoms are thinking it will inhibit or prevent them from experiencing the pleasure that they'd like to experience.
The Soliloquy podcast focuses on the variability of sexual expression. When it comes to sexual expression, we often depend on pornography to illustrate how one must perform sexually. For those who have not learned this by now, the stuff you see in porn is not real. Pornography provides a singular perspective of sexual expression that is not often the reality we see during our own sexual encounters. The Soliloquy podcast is a conversation that takes you outside of the compressed box of what many know about sex. Some of the topics we discuss includes kinks, condom usage, status disclosure, and past sexual experiences. The Soliloquy podcast steps out on sexual norms and recognizes that the norm is not the only normal. Subscribe today and join the conversation.
Most people who choose not to use condoms are thinking it will inhibit or prevent them from experiencing the pleasure that they'd like to experience.
Exactly. And that's I'm actually doing a workshop to help some people with understanding. Well, this is kind of a hands-on workshop, so I can't talk about way too much, but it's for an event that I'm going to. But within that is helping people understand that you can still feel pleasure while having a condom on. It's a barrier, but it's not going to inhibit your pleasure at all. It's a lot of that is just mental, that you think that you're not going to experience these same sensations, but that's not always the case. Even with those individuals who've gone most of their life without using condoms, I know in order to get your body used to it, is always recommended, well, often recommended, that you just masturbate with a condom on and just continue to do that until it seems a little bit more normal for you. So it's like once you get past that mental block, things become a little bit easier with the use of condoms. And I love that you mentioned how there is the pregnancy prevention first and STI prevention second, because I see that a lot within queer spaces too, where individuals are just like, oh, we don't need condoms because I'm on PrEP, and I'm just like, that's great that you're on PrEP, but there's still other things out here. Like, you still have syphilis, you still have gonorrhea, chlamydia, what is it, trichomoniasis? I always forget that one. Trichomonas, I forget. I remember it starts with a T and it has trick in it. HPV. It's so many other things out here that you can prevent by the use of condoms. But since we're so focused on the baby prevention, well, pregnancy prevention, and I guess that just trickles over to queer spaces as well. If I can't get them pregnant for real, I might as well do whatever I want, because that's not a risk here. And since HIV is out of the way too, it's free game. But we have to think.
Yeah, how do you find it's most helpful to reframe that?
Ooh.
I mean, I like when people seem to get stuck in that mindset. I'm like, that's a powerful reframe of
That is like, that's a good question. I don't even know where to start. I know in terms of media, there was a show that I did appreciate very much. It was an episode of Insecure by Issa Rae, where they had an episode when they were talking about condoms. So they briefly discussed it, and even in that episode they weren't really using condoms, so it's kind of like we're defeating the purpose here. But it was great to at least have the conversation and have that out there for people who don't know about condom or haven't received a condom use education. But outside of that, I don't even see condom discussions on a regular basis in any kind of media. Even the sex ed education show, I don't remember too much about condoms. Yeah, they may bring it up, make sure you use a condom, but not really anything about STIs. There was an outbreak, but that was it.
I mean, and it's a real thing, right?
Mhm.
Those are sexually transmitted infections that could easily be prevented from the use of a condom, whether it's a penile condom, a female condom, right? There's options in terms of condoms. I mean, I also think of dental dams in terms of condoms. It's like this barrier protection that keeps one safe.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I guess I'm when yeah, what I find is that people who are pro condoms, and it's like they're preaching to the choir, right? Because people who listen, yes, absolutely, that's why I would use a condom. And then people who are not interested in using condoms because they don't have to worry about pregnancy are not necessarily considering STIs, and they don't wish to because they're really stuck in that the pleasure is the pleasure that they experience, and it would change if they were to use a condom. So it seems like it's hard to convert those who are believe in that to anything different.
It is. Like I know, like even when it comes to the sexual encounters I've had, and I've met people who are just like anti-condom, the raw is law people. They're out there. They are out there. I don't support you. I break the law all the time. So because of that, I have those conversations with people, and I let them know, hey, well, you can still have pleasure with the condom on. It's not going to make that big of a difference for you. Once you get outside of your head, everything is great. And many of those encounters, it was actually a good sexual encounter. But there's also those who are so fixated that they're just like, no. And I'm like, okay, I respect your decision. I respect your choice because we just mutually understand that we're just not sexually compatible in that way, but more power to you. So I would say over the years, I built up the conversation in a way with other people so I can have it, but I also don't know how that conversation can happen in a generalized way because at least when it came to my encounters, it was because there was that mutual, we're going to this stage, we have the intentions of hooking up. So now we're discussing these things about sexual health. And I also had a conversation with someone recently about just saying, letting them know, well, it's great if you do get tested regularly, but always remember, you if you're out here having sex with other people without protection, it does take time for any kind of disease to develop. And on top of that, your sexual health is always going to be something that's important. It's like your mental health, it's like your physical health. You need to check that on a regular basis to know what's going on and do what you can to protect it. So, I don't know.
Yeah, well, and I appreciate what you're saying there, Vernon, about choice. It's like you can hear where somebody's at, and you can proceed with the encounter if it's in agreement to where you're at, and if it's not, to really not just be attached to the outcome, even though you wanted to have had this encounter. That if it's not going in the way that you want it to go in terms of using a condom, that you can then be at choice and be like, this isn't working for me. I'm going to choose to say no, thank you. And what I often find is that when people are in that heightened state of arousal and they have not already had this conversation, they're less likely to follow through on their own desire if they want a condom, because they might just feel like they need to succumb to having, even if it violates or goes against what it is they had originally said they wanted. Does that make sense?
Yes, that does make sense. And I like that you brought in the concept of, people will still want to have the sex the way that they want to because of what they recognize as an orgasm or them getting to their limits and how that may violate another person or go against that consent. What is informed consent? Because I think this is a very important thing to have, well, to talk about as it relates to this same topic too.
Goodness, what is informed consent? I feel like that's a question of a lifetime. It's like I see people, I really do. I see people who are married and still considering consent, and I'm like, thank goodness on some level, and also recognizing that people who are just in the courtship area of their lives aren't even having these questions or conversations about consent. And I think that they're important, and what constitutes Consent, well, I think it's something about speaking about your relationship status, if that's an important factor for you. Um, Speaking about your boundaries, what things don't work for you, and speaking about your desires, about what does work for you. Uh, Also, speaking about your sexual history, about what has been your experience, whether you've had STIs, um, whether you've had trauma. I
Mm.
mean, I think it's a pretty comprehensive conversation. And unfortunately, what I find is that most people don't give it enough time to have the conversation that they'd like to have or they wish they had had. I find as people get older, they're a little bit more mature about having this conversation because they've got more words, they've got more fluency, and they have some more comfort around speaking what it is their truth is. But I think what I find is in the beginning of our sexual lives, we just don't have this model. We don't have the skill set, and we don't have the capacity to deal with that type of, I would say, that it can cause, because there's a lot of shame that a lot of us have around sex and sexuality, a lot of lack of education. But I think consent is informed by all of those experiences, our education, um, and our experience.
Mm. And I I love that at the top of that you mentioned that you informed consent relates to how we see each other within a relationship, and that had me on the train of thought of those pivotal conversations you have with somebody when you ask that, that popular question, what are we? What are we to each other? And we have to push that idea of the terms of the relationship does have to be mutually agreed upon, that both parties have to have that understanding of whether this is just something that's strictly sexual or if this is something that may be moving towards a long-term relationship or what have you, or this may be something that we're just friends who just happen to have sex or whatever the case is. But bringing that up to discuss in detail, I think that's something that is very important that we don't often think about. Uh, in addition to how we act when it comes to, like, let's say, family roles, when it comes to like, oh, I want you to be the person who cooks, or I want to be the person who cleans. How do you feel about working? Like, you do have to take a moment to understand that these roles have to be consented into rather than placed or forced upon a person because of whatever the relationship is. And I think part of that is why I really do hate gender roles, because it forces people into a position rather than they have that conversation with their partners to see how can we mesh together to act out or perform this family system the way that we want it to go.
That's beautiful. I love that. Yeah, because we have natural inclinations, maybe, or tendencies that we lean towards, and then we have the societal roles that are imposed upon us, and somewhere in between we live. And then, how do we actually want to live? And how do we have awareness with our agency to be expressive in the way that we want to live within relationship? I think all those layers are important to attend to, and that consent is a piece of that. We
Mm,
don't want to impose our thoughts on another person of who they should be.
oh my God, that part. Yes, I think that's part of the reason why I hate labels because
Yeah.
when we do have those labels, people tend to um, dictate how another person should be acting or living their lives. And I don't know how many times I've had conversations with friends who identify as lesbian who mention how because they did something outside of the norm, they were, in a sense, excommunicated. And I haven't heard many stories related to queer men, which is interesting, but I have heard stories of if like from queer men that if I'm not feminine enough in certain spaces, then I don't feel comfortable in being in those spaces. So it's like we have this image that we have to act certain way rather than fully being our authentic selves in whatever space that we choose to operate in. So it's very interesting. Yeah, labels is just not for me.
Yeah, yes, yeah. And how do we succumb to them? And how do we adhere to them in ways that we're not even conscious of?
Mm, that. So, something that we ended up discussing was how, when it does come to how individuals operate sexually, be it the use of condoms, not using using condoms, or even just how people just let's I don't want to say sleep around, but possibly may have a promiscuous lifestyle or a more conservative lifestyle. But we were discussing how sometimes we get in a space where we're not respecting others and we also do not respect ourselves too. So what does that look like when it relates to sexuality?
Mm, mhm, mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think about that in really simplistic ways. And so my sense is that when we're not honoring the sensations in our body and going with the thought that I should consent or I should say yes or there's some obligatory force that's at play, that's when things become problematic, or that's when things go awry, is my sense, is that the opportunity, particularly with sex and sexuality, is to come back to the body and what is true. And when we're feeling those sensations of arousal and we know this is absolutely what I want, then to be able to surrender to that is a powerful experience. But when we let the mind dictate, sometimes it can become problematic, especially when we get into the obligations of I should be saying yes or I should be anything different than I am.
Hmm. I think many of us fall in that space of what we should be doing in rather than what I want. Because I like most definitely when it comes to pleasure, um, I've had experiences where individuals thought that they should be able to do certain sexual acts or be able to please me a certain way, and I have to have that conversation with them. Like I don't really have expectations when it comes to sex because sometimes things don't go out the way that you want them to. And having expectations just make it harder for myself as well as for the other person. So going into this space without those expectations removes that should for me. And I think with other people, because they have that performance mindset when it comes to sex, is always, I should make this person make this certain noise. I should be hearing these certain moans. I should be able to come, I guess, or make them come, or whatever the case is, rather than just enjoying the moment and just having fun. Um, I don't want to say sex should be fun, but in a way, I kind of want to say
Sure.
it should be fun. So it's like, if you're going to have a should, let it be that.
I love it. That's good.
But it's like the performance anxiety. I've seen some research that focus primarily on men, but it's interesting to know that that happens to women too when it comes to sex.
Yes.
It's not talked about enough. And that's the thing that's very interesting to me that some women have that idea of how they should perform. And I think a lot of that comes from porn because of how it's done in the male gaze, and it's pushing that idea of this is how a man's supposed to please a woman, but this is how she's supposed to please her man too, be it with the oral or how the body moves and things like that. I think those things, well, I feel as though those things really get embedded into a lot of younger people as well as older people who've been watching porn. So it 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 gives that sense of performance anxiety because now I have to make sure I meet these markers.
Yeah, I mean, and that's why women fake orgasms, right?
Mm, good point.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah, yeah. So, like you said, everybody struggles with performance anxiety, and then it shows up in different ways. Yeah, it is true. And yeah, and pornography, which is a form of entertainment, is often suffice as information or education, is what I see, because it's so ubiquitous. It's like everybody's consuming it and everybody's receiving it, and then it becomes, this is instruction, this is information for me to use as I'm proceeding forward in my own sexual life. And it is one piece, but it's not everything. I mean, there's so much more information that would provide a comprehensive sexual education that most of us just don't receive. And because there's this huge gap between what could be, or what one imagines could be, and where we're at, it creates a lot of anxiety because we have no idea how to get further along our path than where we're at today. But we see the pornography and we think maybe that's the epitome of where I could be. And again, there's this huge gap, which creates anxiety that we experience.
I'm contemplating the idea of if there were to be sex ed based porn. I know, like, people like us, we will watch it because we're watching it for the educational side, as well as if there's the pleasure side of it too, that, people may want to um, masturbate to. But the thing that is nagging at the back of my head is, will that be beneficial for the broader society because of the educational aspect? Because people do not often go to porn in a sense to educate themselves, but educate themselves by watching through their lens of pleasure, I guess would be the way to say that. Um, versus, oh, I'm watching this pornography to have it give me the exact instructions and teach me about sexual health, because most people gravitate to it because they're looking to uh, a- find some type of arousal, be it masturbation or some kind of getting turned on so that they can go to do whatever the hell they want to do after that. But I don't see too many people going to Pornhub to type in, oh, let me watch this sex ed porn and see what I can learn today.
Correct. Yeah. And what I'm suggesting is that because there is a lack of education, people fill in the blanks. They're like, if they see this pornography and it's arousing and they're missing all the pieces of education that could be, that are just not there, then it kind of informs their pathway forward. So they're making a bridge from the pornography to their experience consciously or unconsciously. I would suggest most people do, because they desire that. And that arousal is a high state of desire, and that we want that. And that's a powerful way to learn. So when something's that compelling, then it's imprinting on us in a way that we want to create more of that. So I actually think that's a really powerful way to learn, whether we're seeing it as a linear progression of education or instruction, maybe not, but we're learning something from that information that we're receiving.
Hmm, beautiful. Well, Tara, I say that wraps up that episode. Are you ready to get into a little bit of never have? You know what? Let's not do that because I actually have some sex questions. It's this game that I have. I think at this point, I might as well tell everybody the name of it. It's called 100 Questions About Sex. I got it on Amazon. It's really, really, really good. So, would you like a sex question or a never have I ever?
Um, I'm kind of scared of the sex questions because I'm like, I don't know.
Well,
And never have I never. I feel like, well, I don't know about that either. So maybe you should choose, Vernon.
all right, let's try. Let's see. Oh, well, this is kind of perfect because this will kind of ask, have you ever done something? And this is also the sex question, so it's a mix of both.
It's a twofer.
Twofer. So the question is, have you ever watched your lover have sex with someone else? If not, would you want to?
Oh, well, this is easier than I thought. That's easy. Yes, um, and why not? Or yes, what was I just feel yes is the answer.
Oh, that's the answer. Like, it was just asked, have you ever watched? I have not watched a lover have sex with someone else, but I am very open to doing that. I am very open to doing it. Like, I've been in threesomes and whatnot, and I haven't had any of those kind of experiences while actually in a relationship with someone. So it's like, I'm just open to it. I think um as time goes by, and people become a little bit more confident in their relationships, I feel as though people will live a little bit more non-monogamously, while still holding a lot of their monogamous principles for those who are more on the monogamous side. What is your take on that?
I think that's beautiful. I love that sentiment. And I do see that. I feel like I see a lot of people who are interested in practicing ethical non monogamy, and that somebody had to break down that as an acronym for me, ENM. And I was like, what is that? So I tell you, I don't know. But then when they broke down, I'm like, I totally know what that is. And yeah, I see a lot more of that in my practice and in the world. That people are wanting to explore, they're wanting to feel safe and committed in a relationship, and also not feel like they're dead, and that they're really exploring, evolving, challenging themselves and their relationship to the edge of their comfort, and then kind of folding back that discomfort in so it becomes a more comfortable place and then becoming more expansive. I see that.
Mm, sounds beautiful. Well, Tara, that this it has been. I love you. This has been great. I feel so good. I feel warm inside. I don't know why. It's your
Oh,
spirit.
oh,
I
how
think it's what it
sweet.
is.
You're
So,
so sweet.
do you have any last words that you'd like to share with the audience before I close this out?
Yeah, I feel like it's really important to remember is to be kind to yourself. I feel like it's just really important. It's when we're learning new things like sex and sexuality and different techniques or different things we want to practice. So just really be kind to yourself, and that you might be a little bit awkward, you might be a little bit uncomfortable, but you'll get it in the perfect time. And to just be gentle with yourself. And that's the most important thing I wanted to say.
Yes, yes, amen to that. Please be
Mhm.
kind to yourselves because
Yes.
this we do live in a very tough world and there's a lot of things going on and sometimes you just have to sometimes honestly I just want to scream, but then I give myself space to feel everything I need to, and that's my way of showing kindness to myself. And for anybody listening, and if you feel the same way, if you feel like you need to scream, go somewhere where you're not going to disturb somebody, because if you live in an apartment complex, please don't. But go somewhere and scream, let it out, let that energy out, and allow yourself some time and space. Give yourself some grace. Like Tara said, be kind to yourself. So, thank you so much, Tara. To
My
the
pleasure, Vernon.
to the listeners out there, thank you all so much for listening to the Holy podcast, where we step out and speak on sexuality. Just in case no one else told you this today, you are beautiful, you are worthy of happiness and joy, you are enough and then some. You may not live up to the expectations of others, but that is okay. You are only required to walk in your own shoes. May each day you live lead you towards abundance. With that said, love you all and see you next episode. Bye. Thank you for listening to the Holiloquy podcast, where we step out and speak on sexuality. You can subscribe to the podcast through your favorite podcasting app and find us on the web at www.holiloquy.com. That's www.heauxliloquy.com. Share the podcast with your friends and join the conversation.